Hello, hello, hello! I am Artemis_anime, and today I am reading A Robin's Nest by SilvermistAnimeLover. Chapter 3 Quirk Assessment. Summary. Izuku has his first day of school at UA and makes some new friends. Happy Wednesday, everyone, and happy, almost, Thanksgiving. I hope you all enjoyed this latest chapter of A Robin's Nest because things are starting to get interesting. Also, I finally have a day off, so I'm going to write instead of cleaning my room like I probably should. Meh, I've, shockingly, got a Saturday off work, too, so I'll clean then. Working 2 jobs is so hard. I'll toss in babysitting as well. As an only child, I've got 0 experience with small children, and it's hard. And free time goes to 0. Luckily, one job may or may not be willing to promote me to full-time employee, which means I could drop my other job and then actually have just one job and still pay all my bills and rent. Because I have to keep reminding my coworkers I completely support myself. I don't get a free ride to anything. Keep your fingers crossed for me. Chapter 3 Quirk Assessment. It had been nearly 2 weeks. Izuku was fairly confident that he'd passed, but his nerves always made him second-guess himself. So he did what he always did when stressed. Patrol. He'd unfortunately been unable to run into a Razorhead during this time, but he'd bagged nearly twice as many criminals as he usually did. Present Mike had, as promised, spoken to him after the exam. He guest starred on his radio show twice a week now, Fridays and Saturdays. Izuku absolutely loved it, and went by the name Richard, Richie as Mike called him, on the radio show, much to Mike's confusion. The two got along swimmingly, and even traded personal numbers. He had permission to call him Yamada, outside of the radio station, of course. The two texted regularly, and Izuku found it surprisingly not weird to be friends. At least, he was pretty sure they were friends, with someone who may or may not be his teacher soon. He hadn't met any of the other teachers or heroes during this time, but he still enjoyed the time he took in the evenings to unwind. On those nights, he patrolled after the radio show and went until sunrise. Tonight, he found his favorite person sitting on a rooftop. "Been looking for you, Eraser," he grinned as said hero twitched in surprise. "Midoriya," he nodded in greeting. "So you did figure it out," Robin grinned, setting the hero a wink. "Not that hard. Your movements were practiced and the grappling hook was a giveaway. I wasn't necessarily trying to hide from you. I made this game easy." He placed his hands behind his head in a carefree manner. "You've impressed Nezu, you know. That is no small feat." "I did? How?" Robin thought that maybe it had been from his fast movements at the end, but maybe it was the robot thing at the end. "You're kidding me. You hacked the 0-pointer. The security encoding on that thing rivals the government's." Eraserhead leveled him with a disbelieving look. "Oh yeah. It would have been faster if I'd been allowed my usual equipment, but I only had my phone on me, so I had to make do." "Make do," he echoed. "You really are a problem child." "You know, I hacked the pentagram once." He grinned as the Eraserhead choked on his bit. "Why did you—" "You know what? I don't want to know." "Nope. The less you know, the safer you are," Robin grinned. He didn't mention the time he hacked S.H.I.E.L.D., though. Were they even still around? He'd have to look into that later. "Once the semester starts, I'll expect you to stop doing these patrols alone." I know, Robin sighed. "So, Nezu approved the apprenticeship?" "He did, on the condition you meet with him at some point during the first week of school." There was a lull as the two scanned the surrounding area for trouble. "Who the hell trained you, kid?" "My mentor. He's one of the greatest heroes I've ever known." Robin smiled softly, looking out over the skyline. "Taught me everything I know." Eraserhead waited. Robin knew he wanted a name, but honestly, that name would be recognized, however vaguely, even now. The echoes of his mentor reached even here 300 years into the future. "He is gone now. Died a long time ago," Robin finally said, trying to ignore the painful clenching of his heart as the words left his lip. "I'm sorry. It's never easy losing the people you care for." Maybe I'll tell you the story one day. Maybe even his name. But not tonight." I'll be here when you're ready. Just as long as nothing comes back and bites you in the butt. If someone from your past comes up, I expect you to tell me before anyone's at risk, yourself included. Eraserhead sent Robin a mild glare to accentuate his point. Fair enough, Robin chuckled. The chances of that happening are slim to none, he muttered. Somehow, I doubt the Joker can survive 3 centuries, mad genius or not. The evening passed relatively quietly, likely due to Robin's overactive vigilante work lately. The sun was starting to light the horizon as the two went to part ways. Oh, and congrats, kid. I'll see you in my class on Monday. Eraserhead smirked as he called over his shoulder. And if he grinned at the excited whoop from Robin, nobody saw. By the time Robin slipped into his bedroom window at home, he was exhausted. The nervous energy combined with finally having the answer to his enrollment at UA equated to one extremely tired vigilante. And I thought tests in normal high school were nerve-wracking. At least in America, they don't have exams to get into high school. He shook his head. His mother was asleep. He knew. His father, luckily, was away on a business trip. After Izuku had vanished at the tender age of 9 due to an accident involving someone else's quirk, his mother had panicked, calling his father home. Of course, Izuku had reappeared a few days later. A few days to everyone else, at least. But he'd changed so much in those few days that his mother had grown increasingly concerned. His father, on the other hand, had been hoping that Izuku had finally developed a quirk. He was wrong. But ever since then, he'd been going back and forth between trying to force Izuku's non-existent quirk to emerge and just plain abusing the kid. His mother had no idea, and Hazashi only hit him when he'd been drinking. In exchange for Izuku's silence about the abuse, he'd keep his hands off Inko. And he'd threatened to kill Inko if Izuku ever told anyone outright. Accidental slips that could be exclaimed away were met with accidental drunken rages on Inko, to which Hazashi would apologize profusely when sober, and she'd forgive him because she was far too nice. Purposeful slips, his father promised, would be met with Inko's death and Izuku's endless suffering. Whether that meant suffering more beatings or selling him to villains remained to be seen. Either way, his father only remained home a few weeks or so before leaving for a few weeks on business. Izuku didn't complain when the man vanished, and though Inko seemed mildly disappointed, the man was a brilliant actor. She never stopped him from going. Izuku was grateful, so he knew he could rest easy for a few more days before Hazashi returned from said business. With that in mind, he let his eyelids slide closed and fell into an odd dream that he'd vaguely remember upon waking. Something about Bruce and Barbara and Wally and Alfred and, for whatever reason, Eraserhead and Present Mike had been there too. I'm so lost, Izuku sighed. Looking at the hallway he was sure he'd passed through several times already. He heard someone chuckle behind him. Turning to look, he found Pro Hero Snipe. Fighting to the urge to fanboy, though he couldn't keep this excited sparkle from his eyes, he pouted. Oh, it's not nice to laugh at someone's misfortune. Sorry, kiddo, Snipe grinned. Looking for 1A? Yeah, Aizawa Sensei would kill me if I was late. Do you know where it is? Oh, so you are him, he smirked. Aizawa warned us about you, Robin. He jabbed a thumb behind him. Back that way. 2 lefts and a right. Better hurry. The bell will ring in 6 minutes. Arigato, Snape-sensei. With that, Izuku dashed off in the direction that the blonde had indicated. Within a minute, he was standing between a very large and imposing doors of Class 1A. Wasting no time, he quietly pushed the door open and slipped in. Not for the first time, he thanked his training. By remaining quiet and silent, he prevented the class from noticing him, though it seemed they were all too entertained by getting to know one another. The blue-haired kid who'd interrupted Present Mike's speech during orientation was there. So was Bakugo and that girl he'd met briefly before the exam. He quietly slid into his seat, right behind the explosive blonde, and waited. He knew Aizawa, and the man would certainly make an impression. After all, Anonymity was the perfect way to test someone's experience, and when you looked like a hobo who hadn't slept in a month, It makes for a great excuse to see what if people are willing to pay attention to details. Things that Robin had noticed when he'd first laid eyes on the man. Things that screamed that this person was a pro-hero and not a hobo. Like the sharpness of his gaze, the steadiness to his voice, how every single movement, no matter how lazy it may seem, conserved energy and wasted nothing. Or, the obvious stuff, like his capture weapon and the knife in his left boot. Movement caught his eye, and he found himself locked in a brief staring contest with the man he'd just been thinking about. Though, said teacher was now laying on the floor. In a sleeping bag? I've seen some weird shit, and I guess it does make sense, but why would he crawl all the way from the teacher's lounge in a sleeping bag? That seems unnecessarily exhausting. He raised an eyebrow to convey this thought, to which Aizawa rolled his eyes and waited for the other students to notice that they were no longer alone. It took 8 seconds. Izuku was severely disappointed in them. Apparently, so was Aizawa, as the man chewed them out, in a tone that said he really didn't want to be there, and told them all to change into their gym uniforms and meet out on the field. Izuku grinned. Years as a vigilante, particularly the years as Robin, fighting alongside Batman, had taught him how to change in seconds. Time was precious after all, and spending even 1 minute changing versus the 10 seconds that he could do now would waste 50 seconds that could cost someone their life. He knew this. He'd seen it happen. Even so, this was school, and nobody's life was at stake. Izuku was changed out on the field in 13 seconds flat, having jumped out the window and parkoured his way down the outer wall of UA, much to the shock and awe of the handful of classmates who saw him do so. Kirishima in commentary. He reached the field at the same time as Aizawa. Problem child? He raised his eyebrow. What? I don't like to waste time. He crossed his arm. Time lost changing clothes could kill people. My record now is 10 seconds. I'm working on it. I'm impressed that you can do it that fast to begin with. It's not a skill most heroes have these days. The old heroes used to do it all the time, Izuku sighed. It's a good skill to have. He paused a moment. Do not take offense to the topic of today. It's Quirk assessment test. Oh? Izuku smirked. I'll accept that challenge then. Quirk or no quirk, I can hold my own in a fight. I have no doubt of that. As a reward for being the first in the field, I'll give you one hint. Don't panic. Izuku glanced up at his teacher's mischievous smile, returning it with one of his own. He knew he felt the kinship in there somewhere. A fellow prankster. Just, apparently, a prankster that liked quieter and more subtle pranks. After a few minutes, his classmates started to trickle out. Dude, did you seriously jump from the window? That was so manly! Kirishima grinned, clapping a bewildered Izuku on the back. Thank you? You have to teach me how to do that, Kamari grinned. I'm sure you'll pick up the skills during our classes, he replied, settling into a relaxed posture. 12 minutes, Aizawa spoke up as soon as the last person joined the group. That was 12 minutes a villain could have used to kill hostages. The smiles froze and died as the students processed what he said. The only person who seems to be taking this seriously is Midoriya. I said the same thing earlier. Time is precious, and you cannot afford to waste it. He sighed. That aside, we should be having a Quirk assessment test. Now, you'll all be familiar with. But what about orientation? Uraka asked, and Izuku had to wince. She interrupted him. You've got 3 years. That's it. 3 years to learn how to not die while protecting the lives of people around you. We don't have time to waste on things like orientation. UA prides itself on its free-form teaching approach. That approach to teachers as well. He sent the girl a mild, for him, glare, before continuing on. As I was saying, these tests will be the same one you've been doing all your life. Long jumps, endurance runs, ball throws. But this time, you'll be allowed to use your quirk. Sounds like fun, the pink-skinned girl, Ashido, grinned. Izuku felt a flash of anger. They're just children. They have no idea what's in store for them out there, he reminded himself. Sure, he had a shit ton of fun on patrols and fighting villains, but he knew the dangers of this profession. He'd stared his own death in the face many times and watched the light leave the eyes of those he'd failed to protect. He was prepared. He had fun because it was his coping mechanism and his own life choice. He entered this profession knowing full well what he was getting himself into. And even then, he almost died. These children were brought up believing to be the same kind of celebrity thing, and it honestly sickened him. He became a hero without expecting thanks or recognition. He did it because he didn't want to see other people suffer. He wanted to help people. But in the Quirk era, most kids did it because it was the cool thing to do. Because they wanted to be popular or feel important, or they believed it was the fast route to getting rich. It was one of the reasons why the old heroes were so respected. They get nothing in return and still became incredible heroes. Fun. Aizawa's eyes turned sharp, and Izuku knew that the man had been thinking along similar lines. You think this is going to be fun? Alright then, let's add a little something. The person with the lowest score or across all the tests will be deemed to have 0 potential and be expelled. There was an outcry among the students about how unfair it was that the first day of school. Again, Izuku felt his own anger flaring up. Life is unfair, get used to it. He snapped out, glaring at the others. You think villains fight fair? You think they're gonna take it easy on you because it's your first day on the job? I'm sorry, but that's not how the world works, he scoffed and bit his tongue, stopping himself from going on the rant. His classmates were already staring at him wide-eyed. A few of them shook their heads, dismissing his words as just that, a child with as much inexperience as them. He is right, Aizawa spoke up. It's a hero's job to make it fair. Take advantage of everything. Adapt to everything around you. Analyze, adapt, overcome. Plus ultra. After that, the class fell in line fairly quickly. And though Izuku wasn't allowed to use his gear, he still felt he did a lot better than some of his other classmates. And he still gave it his all. At the very least, he was proud of himself for outlasting Yajirosu in the endurance test. How the hell did you manage that, Kirishima gasped? She made a freaking motorbike, for crying out loud. I had a tough mentor. Even Aizawa couldn't completely hide his disbelief at Izuku outlasting a motorbike of all things. Psh, she's got nothing on chasing villains around Gotham all night. Compared to that, outlasting a motorbike is a piece of cake. The final test, the ball throw, Izuku realized that he needed to not score the worst for this one, which wasn't looking to be that much of an issue considering the fact that Ashido had melted half the ball and the invisible girl had managed to get a somewhat below average score. He stood in the circle and thought for a brief moment before smirking. He quickly took off his shoes and socks and fashioned a makeshift sling. What are you doing? One student asked. The rest of them looked just as bewildered. Leveling the playing field, Izuku smirked, before swinging in a very practiced motion. Once he felt the apex of his swing, he released the ball. With a proper sling, he could have thrown the ball at least 400 meters, but since this was rudimentary at best, he only got to 297. Still a lot better than the other kids, though. With little fanfare, he untied his socks, slipped them back on before replacing his shoes. Is that even allowed, Sensei? Someone asked. I said do whatever you want, so long as you don't leave the circle. To anyone else, he would have sounded monotone and done with the day, but Izuku could hear the approval in his voice. It impressed him. Deku! Bakugo shouted, enraged as he charged Izuku. He just stood there, waiting for the right moment to dodge, when I saw his scarf wrapped around the boy, and his quirk erasing the explosions that had just been crackling on the boy's hand. Stop making me use my quirk. It's giving me serious dry eye. Aizawa growled as he pulled the struggling blonde away from his target. I will not tolerate infighting in my class. Pull another stunt like that and there will be consequences, Aizawa promised, before releasing the quirk and hold. Bakugo stood there, glaring at Izuku. You think you're better than me? Huh? Izuku ignored him, causing the blonde to snarl. But his impending explosion was cut off when Aizawa continued the assessment. Before Izuku realized it, they'd finished, and Aizawa showed them the results. Izuku was quite pleased to see himself placed solidly at 10, right in the middle. The person at the bottom was unbelievably short boy with purple balls for hair. The kid gave off a lecherous vibe that Izuku did not like. He made a mental note to keep an eye on the brat around girls, just in case. Alright, here are the results, Aizawa said, after the kid started to cry. Oh, nobody's getting expelled. It was just a logical ruse to make sure you did your best. The man's grin was frankly terrifying to the kids, but Izuku had seen worse. That's Robin. and no one's smile is creepier than the Joker. Hey, so I'm curious, what was your quirk? Something like agility, maybe? Or intelligent booster? Ashido grinned as the rest of the class leaned in to listen. Stupid Deku doesn't have a quirk. He's quirkless. Bakugo butted in with a nasty grin. Gee, thanks for essentially outing me, jerk. Sure, Izuku was going to tell them himself anyhow, but the fact that Bakugo just outright told them himself without even considering Izuku's position on the matter pissed him off, and judging by the look on Aizawa's face, his teacher agreed with him. What? Quirkless? No way! A few of them shouted, and Izuku steeled himself, preparing for the negative backlash that he knew was going to come. That's so awesome! Kirishima cried out with a grin. What? Izuku stared blankly at the redhead. You managed to get into the hero course without a quirk? Dude, you're amazing! Kaminari grinned, Gyro nodding along. Must have cheated somehow. No way, a quirkless kid could have gotten in. Mineta scoffed. Ah, there it is. For a minute, I was worried I'd stepped into an alternate dimension. He relaxed at the familiar jeer. Hey man, not cool, Kirishima glared. Everyone has earned their position here, Ida reprimanded the short classmate. Yue would never let someone underqualified into the hero course. To say such a thing is offensive and rude. Apologize immediately. Everyone calm down, Aizawa spoke up, cutting off Mineta's reply before he could get started. I assure you that quirk or no quirk, everyone is here for a reason. If you've got a problem with that, there will be plenty of controlled combat situations where you can address the problem yourself. I don't want to hear anything about how anyone is giving crap because of how they were born. I do not tolerate bullying in my class, he glared. Now scram. You've got a class to get to. Izuku stayed back after the class had moved on to grab the syllabus. Thank you. You're the first teacher who actually spoke up for me. I expect you to let me or any other teacher know if something happens again, Aizawa sighed. You're far too used to that. Don't think I didn't notice how you relaxed at Mineta's word. Honestly, I thought I got dropped off in the Twilight Zone or something, Izuku chuckled before realizing that Aizawa might not know what the Twilight Zone was. Do they have a more modern remake? I think it came out in about 223:45, about 20 years ago. Anyways, you were totally gonna expel someone. Don't think I didn't hear about those 3 homeroom classes you expelled. Izuku changed the subject. There's potential. The test wasn't about physical ability, but to gauge the level of determination each student has, he explained. I figured that much. It's illogical to test the control of a student over a quirk when it's their first day, especially when they're legally only allowed to use their quirks at home or in designated quirk practice areas, which can be expensive. So logically, you were looking for something else. Something that would be essential to become a hero. Determination and drive are important, yes, but that can be tested over other methods. He smirked when he looked up at Aizawa. No, you were testing our ingenuity. What if the odds are against us, when the stakes are impossibly high? Would we freeze, falter, hesitate? Our drive to do whatever it takes to survive when our back is up against the wall. It's something you either have or don't. It cannot be taught, it cannot be learned. Kid, your mind is terrifying. I think I see now why Nezu wants to talk to you this week. Aizawa grinned. While his smile would have been the stuff of nightmares to his classmates, Izuku felt himself grinning back. Experience is life's most efficient teacher. Not the safest, though, the teacher sighed. Now get to class before you're late. Hi, sensei. Izuku grinned as he scaled the side of the building to slip into the window closest to his class. Of course, the actual class didn't start until the following day. Day 1 was just figuring out where everything was and where the teachers were, and Izuku was looking forward to seeing what the school would be like. Ida, Uraraka, Kaminari, and Kirishima were waiting by the gate for him after school. He blinked in surprise. Hi? Hi, Midoriya, Kaminari grinned. We wanted to know if you wanted to walk to the train station together. Why? Izuku tilted his head. Because we're friends, silly, Uraraka grinned. So, what do you say, Deku? Izuku flinched at the nickname. Deku isn't my name. Midoriya Izuku is my name. Deku is something Bakugo calls me to call me useless. I'm sorry, I didn't know. But I just thought that Deku sounded like Dekiru. Like, you can do it. As much as I appreciate that, please don't call me Deku. It brings up some bad memories. He winced. So, dude, we've got to work out together sometime. You have the best stamina in class, and I need to know your secret. Kirishima grinned, diffusing the awkward situation like a pro. The 5 of them chatted amicably on the way, striking up a fierce and fast friendship. The 4 made it known that they couldn't care but less about his lack of a quirk, and Izuku made sure that they knew how much that meant to him. As it turned out, Kirishima and himself had the same train stop. Hey, want to meet up at the train tomorrow at the station? We can ride to school together, Kirishima grinned. Sure, I'll probably take the early train. No problem, man. I'll see you tomorrow, he grinned as he ran off, leaving Izuku smiling after him. Mom, I'm home, Izuku grinned. Welcome home, sweetie. How was school? I made friends, Mom. Oh, Izuku, I'm so happy for you. Sit down and tell me all about your day while I start dinner. And he did. He excitedly talked about how his teacher was his favorite hero, Eraserhead, and how he now had 4 friends who didn't care that he was quirkless. If his mother cried in happiness hearing her normally quiet and reserved son talk so amicably about his first friends since he was 4, then he didn't say anything. And that was Chapter 3, Quirk Assessment of A Robin's Nest by SilvermistAnimeLover. Sorry if there was any not quite so clear words that I said, and please go ahead and go look at SilvermistAnimeLover's profile and read more of their works and give them kudos and comments. Their works absolutely are amazing, so go ahead and give some support to this author. Thank you all for listening. Bye!